what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about classification of living things. So what does classification actually mean? Classification is just a different word for grouping things. So we put, in this case, we're putting living things into different types of groups. Now we do that depending on what kind of features they have. So for example, all of these animals, all these living things on top here have one thing in common. They're all animals, right? So bear, sea star, whatever it is, these are all animals. Now the group below, we have also put all of these animals into a group, but we don't have the sea star, which we had on top. We don't have that one in the group below. The reason why is because these are all in a group which have backbones. We call it chordata, which means all of these have backbones. And in this case, the sea star doesn't belong in that group because the sea star doesn't have a backbone. Now in the group below, again, we can see we've got lots of different types of animals. The animals we don't have in here would be the snake and the sea star. And the reason being because all these animals below are mammals. So mammals have fur or skin, which a sea star and a snake doesn't have. So what we're doing here again, we're putting animals or different living things into groups. For us, it's going to be easier to put things into groups because there's so many living things on Earth, millions of different types of living things, and we quickly need to be able to put a label on them. Right? So if we have in these groups, we can call something a mammal, or we can call something an animal or a bear, and when we say that, we know what that means because we put them into a certain group. Now what we usually do to classify things is we use structural features. So to classify things, to put things into groups, we look at their structure. So for example, we said that anything that's in this group here is in this group because it has a backbone. So we'll use the structure of its skeleton to put it into a group. And we said that the group below, anything that's in this group is because they have hair or fur or skin. So again, we usually use structural features, so something of the structure of the living thing, to put it in a group. And what we usually don't use to classify living things is its habitat, which means where it lives, its behavior, so how it behaves, and usually its eating habits. So these are usually not used to classify living things, but one of the main things that's used to classify living things, put them into groups, is its structural features. So how they look like, what kind of bones they have, and whatever else it might be. Now, animals is a very large group of living things. We have obviously many different types of animals, but the two big categories of animals are called the vertebrates and the invertebrates. And you need to know what each of these terms mean. So the vertebrate simply means an animal with a backbone. And an invertebrate is an animal with no backbone or without a backbone. Right? So know that animals are put into two different categories, the vertebrates and the invertebrates. And a vertebrate has a backbone and an invertebrate has no backbone. Now some examples of invertebrates, which are down here, would be your insects. So these would be your insects right here. Your crabs, your snails, your worms, right? All of these, and your spiders, all of these would be animals that have no backbone. They have no spine, right? They have maybe a skeleton on the outside, but not on the inside. Whereas all of these animals right here are vertebrates that have a backbone. And some of these you should know. So for example, you should know what makes a mammal. So what makes a mammal? So mammals, they don't lay eggs, they lay live born, which means that you have your young coming out, which is already born, straight up. And also something that's usually quite unique about them is they have hair or fur, right? That's for mammals. Now birds have wings, but bats have wings too. But one really important thing is birds have feathers. So these are one of the only vertebrates that have feathers. And they also lay hard-shelled eggs. That's for birds. Amphibians, these are frogs for example, they lay soft eggs and they have moist skin. Reptiles have dry skin and they also lay dry or hard eggs. Right, so these are just some, I want you to make sure you know some of those names, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and birds for example, and just have an idea of what makes something a mammal. So for example, that it has hair or fur and then it gives birth to live young, right? That would be a mammal, whereas a bird would have feathers and it has hard-shelled eggs. An amphibian has moist skin and lays soft eggs, right? So these are some of the characteristics. So make sure you do know quite a few of those characteristics for vertebrates. And for invertebrates, just know that they're basically animals that have no backbone.